Welcome to the Tao of Sports podcast with Troy Kirby, covering sports business with over 300 industry leaders from across the globe. Now, here is your host, Troy Kirby.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Sports podcast. I'm Troy Kirby with episode 881. Mike Dellosa, VP of Ticket Sales at the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now, we talk about, growth in an industry or growth in a franchise. Mike Dellosa has that. He's actually grown up in that Diamondbacks franchise. And what I love about his conversation that he had with me was the fact that he talked about throwing out the playbook, starting anew. Hey, guess what? Things have changed. Pandemic's changed. Everything's changed. We need to think different. I love that innovation. Great conversation with Mike Dellosa right here on episode 881 of the Tao of Sports. Okay, so I guess, Mike, I'll start off with saying things have changed. And we can always get into pandemic stuff, but you grew up in this thing. I know you had time a little bit with the Browns and with the Frisco Rough Riders, which, always go Rough Riders. I still got a jersey from that. But mainly it's been Arizona and the Diamondbacks. From that time, 17 years, what have been the changes that you've seen?
Yes, too many to really name. But I think primarily, I answer this question two ways. I answer kind of what has stayed the same and what has changed. When I started here, I was 22. I was fresh out of a quick stint in Frisco. And that's actually how I ended up here, was our COO at Frisco, Brent Stellick, became the VP of ticket sales here at the Diamondbacks. So, I followed him over to Phoenix. And at that time, it was interesting. We were just coming off a NLCS appearance. The Diamondbacks were. We got swept by the Rockies, but we had a deep postseason run. The economy in Phoenix at that time was still, I don't want to say booming, but it was still in a strong position. I'm talking probably mid to late 2007, and the sales department here really was 10 to 15 people prior to Brent Stellick arriving. And it was mostly inbound, and it was mostly just, working off of Ticketmaster lists and not a whole lot of sophistication to it at that time. Because quite frankly, with the new ballpark and the 2001 World Series and everything, they didn't really need that. Things changed 2005, 2006, 2007. They bring in a new regime. They want to build out more like an NBA style sales department. I was part of that. I started as an account executive focused on selling season tickets. And, we come in with a lot of low-hanging fruit. We had an untouched market. We had no real outbound presence. So we just start, jumping out there and attacking the market as best we can. And then 2008 happened. And if you're...
the Big Short that shorted everybody.
Exactly. And it was one of those, that was, at the time I thought, well, wow, this will be the hardest thing I'll ever have to go through, right? You think that naively. Mm-hmm. And then 2020. And
by the way, let's talk about 2008, because it's not just people didn't have money. It's suddenly people had lawyers who could get them out of sweet deals. Suddenly people had the ability to maneuver because things changed so drastically. It made it was just definitely a pivot, right? Because, everywhere you went, suites just went bye-bye.
If you think about being a CEO or a business owner at that time, and you're everything, the sky is falling, you're having to lay people off, you're having to, make these really tough financial decisions. One of the first things you're likely going to cut is sports entertainment. So, and we're talking, I was, again, 23-year-old sales rep. I would call a CEO of a company on a Tuesday and have a quick chat. I'd call the next day and the numbers disconnected, right? I remember we had reps, not myself, but we had other reps. They try to set up a group outing, and the person on the phone is like, I just had to lay off half of my staff. You think we want to do a company outing right now? We were going through the ringer. And to your point, people getting out of their deals. I remember there was this, we had great inventory open behind home plate. One of the reasons we couldn't sell it is the optics. People didn't want to be on TV during that time enjoying a sporting event because of everything that was happening in the business world. And Phoenix being built on real estate and in the financial sector, it was hit doubly hard. So that was the first real trial and tribulation. And I think, but back that time, to kind of, in a long-winded way, answer your question, we learned that was the first big pivot we had. So in my 17 years here with the D-backs, we've had these, 2 or 3 moments where significant adversity has caused us to completely change direction. And because it's adapt or die. 2008, myself, I was 95% of my daily outbound efforts, my calling, my emailing, what I was doing was B2B. I was focused on selling companies. I had a Phoenix Business Journal lead list I was working off of, which, not very against a lot of sophistication, but that was my bread and butter. Obviously, the recession happens; those leads dry up very quickly, and so we can either throw up our hands and be like, well, it's just not going to work, or we kind of got together with our other leaders here in the ticket industry, and we thought about, maybe calling a company right now and trying to pitch a 200-person group or a suite lease or a 5-figure season ticket deal isn't the best option. But people are still coming to games. Like, we still had at that time 1.5 million fans coming through the ballpark, almost 2 million. And there's still families, there's still people out there having a good time. So let's shift our focus. Let's take every rep we have, and instead of B2B, let's make them entirely B2C. And, nowadays that's common practice. In 2008, that was a novel for us in baseball, at least. It was a not like, whoa, you're going to have us call a family that just went to a random Tuesday game and try to get them to come to more games? That sounds ridiculous. There was a lot of skepticism with the reps, but some of us started doing it, and then very quickly we started selling some mini plans, started selling some partial plans, and that kind of lifted our business to the point where, years past that, we were almost too B2C, and we had to kind of course correct as the economy improved. But so that was one of the big differences was, and now we score leads, and there's all kinds of, live analytics behind it, and a ton of data to show us exactly the consumers that we're targeting on the B2C side. And then, so that was the big kind of strategic change that occurred in my 17 years. The second, to answer your question again, long-winded way, but from a personnel standpoint. So, again, we come out of 2008, I'm thinking naively, that was the hardest thing I'll go through in my career. We're past it. We have the All-Star game coming in 2011, a good young team with Justin Upton and Brandon Webb and Dan Herron. We have this rookie, Max Scherzer. We're going to be set. D-backs are going to be multiple World Series appearances. I'm thinking, it's going to be a great run. Team did not materialize on the field the way we had hoped. All-Star game came and went. It was a big success, but, that's just a one-year lift. And so we're kind of back into this the same kind of mindset that we've been doing with the grind and with the single game buyer leads and the B2B leads. 2020, I'm fast forwarding a big chunk here. 2020, which I'm sure comes up in a lot of these conversations. No baseball, no season. We had to make extremely difficult staffing decisions where, we lost the majority of our sales and service team. At the time, I was senior director of season ticket sales and service. So I was over all of our new membership, our service team, and also inside sales. And 70% of that was gone within the span of 12 months. So we got the green light to kind of rebuild in 2021. And I remember meeting with some of the other leaders and strategizing, how do we want to do this? And we got the green light to kind of build back the way we were. We can just essentially backfill every position that we lost during COVID, or we can sit down and look at this a little differently. We made a significant change, and we introduced AI. So this is, again, 2021. We signed on with Conversica, and basically that some of that budget that we have allocated to headcount, we shifted towards AI. And since then, we're now 4 years into it, almost 4 years. It has been one of the most significant, incredible changes that we've made to our entire sales process. In addition to hiring completely different types of personalities and people for these sales roles than we did prior to 2020. Nothing against the team and the staff we had from 2007 to 2019, but the difference in the people that we attract and hire and develop now is stark and dramatic. And I'll give you one example. Currently, our most successful salesperson is also one of the most introverted, shy individual, and she has no problem with me saying this. People you can come across in a business setting. She is not your look at me out there, shaking hands, kissing babies type salesperson. But she is an incredibly gifted communicator, writer specifically, understands human emotion, understands what makes people tick, and has used that to her advantage to, in her second year here, sell the most new membership revenue of any rep we've had. So that was eye-opening, right? You think you have this cookie cutter way of hiring, and it has to be an extroverted, someone that's great public speaker, all these different things.
The phone crusher.
Is the phone crusher dead?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm being serious. That 100 calls or more, otherwise you didn't do your job in the day.
Yes, we gave up on searching for the phone crusher. Probably 6-7 years ago, we started to make that shift because, naturally, there's elements to the phone crusher that to that type of personality type that are good. Namely the competitiveness, right? But we realized when you put such a strong emphasis on a touch point number, you are gamifying the wrong thing. So, our reps were coming in, and I was guilty of this as an inside sales manager. Our reps were coming in, and they weren't thinking, I need to sell X memberships today. I need to make connections today. I need to, handle objections. I need to, work through my pipeline. They were thinking, I need to get to 100 calls. And they would, by hook or by crook, get to that 100 number as quickly and as efficiently as they could. And they would leave that night thinking, I got to my 100. I did my job. That was a great day. What did they really do, though? They rushed through some calls. They got a few voicemails, and the productivity wasn't what we had thought. So we shifted away from that. Now, what we still look for, and I'll give you one of my favorite interview questions. So if there's anything 2020 taught us, and we're seeing now with the staff we have, one of the many lessons that we learned during that terrible time is the importance and the value of resiliency and being able to bounce back, overcome adversity, process adversity, and move forward. So we have hired now, and we see this kind of across the sales floor, individuals who have dealt with adversity, sometimes personally, sometimes professionally, a proven track record of overcoming those types of things, of getting back up, dusting themselves off. So one of my favorite interview questions, and this kind of ties into the phone crusher mentality a little bit, but in a different way. I'll throw it out. I'll say, hey, imagine you're playing a pickup basketball game or a game of checkers or a video game or something with a friend or a sibling or a family member, and you lose. You lose the game. You could be a thumb war and you lost, right? What is your immediate reaction or response to that outcome? And, we get a variety of different answers. Oh, well, I'll think about what I did wrong, or I'll analyze the person that won and try to learn from them. And you can see people kind of overthinking it. The simple answer I'm looking for is, let's go again. Best 2 out of 3. All right, you got me there, but let's, pick up the ball and have a rematch. That rematch mentality, that's it. That's all what I've learned for the people that stand the test of time in these roles out here. It's the ability to lose, get knocked down, and then say, well, that was brutal, but let's go again. Let's try again.
So let's look at then the sales trainer aspect. We used to get, a group of sales trainers. They would, read the script or do this. I'm not belittling them. That was their forte. Has the sales training and the sales trainer, has that actually changed for you because of the fact you're going into Gen Z? By the way, it was always this managing millennial stuff, and I always wondered if it was more, can Gen X ever manage? Because it just wasn't, they were too solo, right? I'm Gen X, I can criticize myself. But now you've gotten to Gen Z. So how does Gen Z react to sales training when it's different than it would have been for millennials who got beat up all the time, or Gen X who just went phone crusher time, right?
Yep, exactly. It's one of my favorite things about this new generation of employees that are coming through is they crave authenticity. They have some of the highest BS meters you will ever encounter with any past generation. I myself, I think I'm an elder millennial.
Millennial.
Which sounds hilarious.
I love how, but I do love how the generations, it's like you wanted to be Gen X,
Right, exactly. Yeah, everyone looks backward that way, but no, they crave authenticity. So when you have a sales trainer come in, and we've hired different people at different times, we've experimented with different approaches. The second this audience sniffs out, the sales trainer either trying to be, I don't want to say cheesy, but or using like we must have been, I remember the old line that I was taught, the person hangs up on you, you call them right back. Oh, I'm sorry, we must have been disconnected. It's like the Gen Z's like that. Why are you doing that? Like, they hung up on you because they don't want to talk to you.
Also, if they see a number on their cell phone they don't recognize, they'd rather hold an unpinned hand grenade.
Yeah, right? Exactly. So, and again, and I know what you're getting at with this, because I came up in this world. You're ingrained that way. You think, well, that's the way it works. That's the way we were trained. That's how you get through. It is not the case. You have to adapt. It's not trying to fit these new hires into the old way of doing things. It's sitting down with these new hires, understanding where they're coming from, how they work, and then finding trainers or coaches or methods to get them to sell in a way that is best for their strengths and also our customers' strengths. Because guess what? We're starting to have Gen Z customers. We're starting to, it's millennials probably make up a lot of our smaller package sales right now, and a lot of our mini plans and everything. So we have to go to them the way they want to be communicated with. And it's funny too, that how hypocritical are we? You just mentioned you see the number that you don't answer. I don't pick up my phone if I don't recognize the number. I don't say, "Oh, you've reached Mike. How can I help you?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm not answering that. Not answering that." Even if it's number I'm like, I think I might recognize that number. I still don't answer it.
Of course,
right? And
well, we never put ourselves in that shoe, right? And the other issue was just that terror of, well, we'll be kicked out of sports if you say something different or whatever. But does that not also hurt our sales tactics when we aren't trying to innovate constantly?
Exactly. It hurts immensely. And there's nothing more empowering to a salesperson that is doing things the way they want to do them. They're because people thrive in a world in which they create. So they have their method of selling, and it's ethical, and it meets all of our brand standards. But it works for them, it works for their personality, and we give them the freedom, the autonomy to go out there and try it, and guess what? It works. That's how you get a sales rep from being here for 2 years to being here for 5 years, and then being here for 5 years to being a manager or director. And we're not perfect. We're tinkering and experimenting with this constantly. But we had a rep. We have a third party SMS platform that we use, and we had a rep 2 years ago that almost exclusively worked off of that, and he earned the trust of us to let him, hey, if you really think texting is the way that you're going to be most successful, both inbound, outbound, what have you, go for it. Let's see how it works. And it worked. Now, it doesn't work for everybody, but it definitely worked for him. I mean, he was hitting his numbers doing that almost exclusively.
Well, notice the other part is that it used to be, well, hey, if it's just a link, then I don't need you, kind of thing. Not understanding that personality that comes into the text. And by the way, text may not work for me. I'm older, right? But text may work for you or may work for somebody younger. Is that not what, that was part of the barrier, is the idea that, well, I could do it. Well, that's not true. You know what I mean? Yes. It's kind of like me saying I can hit a home run here. I barely could get out of the outfield, but it can look easy. So therefore it must be easy to do, right?
Right. And we give to that point too, it's about what works for the sales rep, but it's also what works for the customer. And you just hit the nail on the head. You don't text, right? Or maybe you're not someone that would fill out an email interest form or things like that. But we have to learn where are people, how are people want to be communicated, and we have to fish where the fish are. So when we get a new lead into our system, I tell our sales reps, if you're an Office fan, there was I can't remember the name of it, but BJ Novak's character was like, woof. It was like a fax, an email, a phone call. They would basically communicate with someone in every different form imaginable. We tend to do the same thing. If we get that information from the lead, we'll leave them a voicemail, we'll email them, we'll shoot them a text. will, not all at the same time, gradually over time. And basically what we're doing there is saying, hey, all of these lines of communication are open to you. You choose the one that you want to use to talk to me, the salesperson, right? I texted you, I emailed you, I left you a voicemail. Now, you pick how you want to respond. If I just called and left a voicemail, and even in the voicemail, even if I said, hey, text me if, you're interested, call me back or text me, the amount of effort it takes to then listen to the number, write it down, or try to text, you lost me already. But if you shoot me a text, you email me, or you leave me a voicemail, all I have to do now is reply to the one that I want to reply to and then work with you exclusively on that route. It's not perfect, but it takes a lot of the work off the buyer, putting it back on the sales rep and just letting them know all these different doors are open. We don't have to talk on the phone if you don't want to talk on the phone. That's okay. We can still, have that relationship, answer your questions and ultimately make the purchase.
One of the things you mentioned was the Frisco Rough Riders. Minor league baseball before the pandemic, no one was really minding the store. You could do whatever you wanted, right? Do you not think that actually helped your sales tactics? Because you were allowed to screw up and no one's paying attention. I don't mean nobody, but at the same time, you might do some wild stuff. Is that something that we need in the innovation side, is the ability to screw up?
Yes.
Because if we don't screw up, don't we end up screwing up?
You're so right. If you're afraid of failing, there's innovation is never going to happen. You have to have a safe environment where people can experiment and try new things and innovate. So, again, not to stay on the generational path here, but there is this permeating fear amongst a lot of the newer employees we have in the younger generation of making a mistake, of being wrong. They have the old millennials, like the FOMO. We always talk about fear of missing out. That still exists now, but now there's fear of making a mistake, fear of being wrong. There's fear of a better option. You look at the problem with people committing to things these days, whether it be relationships or jobs or careers or even what to watch on Netflix at night. There's too many options, and you're afraid that if you pick this, you may miss out on a better option that's right there in front of you, or you may not even see it. We didn't have that problem because there wasn't social media. We couldn't see all the different options that are available, but that does exist now. And then what's even I have found to be even more difficult than that is the fear of being wrong. We've done trainings, meetings, things like that where I'll ask a question to the room and it's silent. And again, my generation, though, going up, I remember people would just be blurting out answers and be wrong all the time because they wanted to look good and they wanted to, I'm gonna, look at me, I know the answer. Now it's like there's so much caution because they're so afraid that they'll say the wrong thing and then we'll ridicule them or they'll maybe made to look bad. But
I think that's somewhat of a cautionary tale about social media. Like I didn't care, right? And maybe you cared a little. They really care because they've seen what happens when you are wrong or you have the wrong viewpoint or you express it. And social media, people just hammer on you, right?
Right.
And Major League Baseball, of all the sports, changed and did a pivot with the pitch clock, which came from a baby boomer, right? The commissioner.
Yes.
Was not something that everyone was like, this is going to be horrible. And I actually think that change actually beat one of the arguments, which was MLS or something else. Hey, that's only 2 hours. Baseball might be 3.5. Now you're cutting it down. Does this not say that sometimes we can also learn and change and actually get the younger generations involved? Because I got to think the pitch clock has actually helped the argument to where I can go to a game. I'm not sitting with a babysitter for 3 hours back at home or 5 hours, whatever, right? I mean, is that?
Yes. I couldn't agree more. I think the changes that MLB made in the last couple of years with the pitch clock, even the size of the base, these different little adjustments, you talk about taking a risk, right? Putting yourself out there, risking upsetting the traditionalists, even putting the DH in the National League, something that, today is like, oh my, like I can't imagine telling my kids, well, there used to be a time where the pitcher would hit. My daughter, she's 10, she'll grow up thinking, what? The pitcher was hitting? Like, what is going on? But now it's like it's standard across both leagues. I think when you are adjusting for things like that, absolutely, it's improved our ratings. It's improved our interest with the younger generations, and it shows that you have a willingness to adapt. Like we talked about a minute ago. adapt or die. That this world will pass you by so quickly if you think you've got it figured out, if you think your product is perfect, your systems are perfect, everything's good, we know what the consumer wants, we know what the fan wants. If you go to bed thinking that every night, you're toast, because it's not true. You have to be asking these questions constantly, and guess what? Their opinions change constantly. What the fan wants today, what the season ticket holder wants today, very different than what they wanted in 2007 when I first started. It's vastly different. That's why our membership platform is something that we work on 12 months out of the year. We're activating. We had over 40 events last year just for members. We have an app for our members where they can go on and RCP that we built in-house through our IT department. These are things that 16 years ago we would have been, if we would have asked for these things, they would have said, what is the point of that? How is that going to sell more tickets?
Well, and the other thing is, and you faced it this last year, the cure-all. Oh, you just win. By the way, you must not be. You must just be totally sold out because cure-alls are right, and that's not true. I mean, if I went to the Rangers, they still have. Everybody's going to have problems. There's always going to be those extra seats, but everyone always thinks the cure-all of getting to the World Series, the cure-all of getting an exciting team is just going to do it. And then that's where they get in the issue of, well, we don't need as many people. Mm-hmm. Is that necessarily true at all?
Absolutely not, because the folks that fixate on that point are thinking of new sales only. And here's what I mean by that. When you buy a membership or a season ticket package, and yes, does winning help bring more interest to the table, bring more potential buyers to us? 100%. I mean, we are getting way more interest in our team right now than we typically do, just because of our deep postseason run and some of the young personalities we have in the winning. But if you're buying a season ticket package or a membership from the Diamondbacks today, you have a pretty high expectation of what this product is going to be like. You're coming in thinking the team's going to be fun and exciting. All these people are buying it. It's got to be great. We then have, like I just mentioned, 12 months to make sure our product is meeting, if at least meeting, but mostly exceeding your expectations. And your expectations have never been higher. Working in sports, we all know we can't control the product on the field. But we actually staffed up on our service side right now. We are not anywhere near a waitlist situation or anything like that. We still have great seats available and great packages available. But my fear, what keeps me up at night right now, is we have this influx of new members coming into our family, which is exciting. It's fantastic. But we got to deliver. We have to up our game. We have to make sure we're meeting their expectations. If the team wins again and has a great, successful season, that'll be fantastic. If they don't, then they're going to look at their membership even closer and be like, well, how are the benefits? How's the value? How was the rep I was working with? What do I think of the seats? You start to become a little more critical of it if it's falling short of that. So to answer your question, you staff up in a situation like this. You can't rely on what's going on out there, and you have to almost double down on your processes and your strategy and your customer service. And here's the thing too, and again, we've been in the industry a long time. We know how cyclical everything is. I mean, there was teams that... Wait,
you're saying that you're not just going to win all the time?
No, I wish, right? Again, Justin Upton, Brandon Webb, Dan Herron. When I got here, we were going to win multiple World Series, but I did my college thesis on the Guardians sellout streak. They in the 90s, they'd sold 455 consecutive sellouts. And, my whole report in college was on why that ended. And, there were some great people working there at the time. And it was, I remember going to games and having a great experience, but they got a little comfortable. They just thought it was always going to be like this. And they took their foot off the gas even a little bit. And then 2001, 2002, 2003, they fell into more of a normal kind of mid-market situation. And that's if you're not thinking about these things and planning for those things, planning for the downfall, planning for, the interest to wane, you're going to be lost.
Well, this comes back to the pandemic, right? So you had an abbreviated season, 50 games. Did you even have fans in the stands at all? I mean, some stadiums were closed. Some, you couldn't do it.
We were one of the first teams to get fans back. It was May of 21 that we were able.
Okay, but let's think about it from that aspect, right? No, we're never going to have it where sports can't ever sell, right? Mm-hmm. Think about how drastically that changed, because there was that one game in Baltimore a few years before, I want to say it was like 5 years before, where they had no fans in the game. They just played the game, and it was eerie, and everyone said, oh, this will never happen, blah, blah, blah. Here it happens. Does it not change the argument that somehow if we just broadcast it on TV, people will watch it without the fans? Because without the fans, there's no energy.
Exactly. There's no energy at all. And I think that was a good lesson. Not lesson, but that was a good reminder for even the players and coaches about just, imagine you're a professional athlete and you have this routine and you go out there to play and you look around, the stadium's empty. There's no cheering. Even the jeering, I think, to some athletes motivates them. So, in that setting in 2020 and into 2021, I think it was a reminder for everyone across the industry how important the fan is, how important live entertainment is. And I remember too the doomsday scenarios back then of, well, it'll, sports and even live music and concerts, like, this will change that landscape forever. Look, it did in certain ways, but you look at attendance right now across the league. You even look at concerts and live entertainment in general right now. Interest came roaring back for those things. I mean, there was just a major concert here over the weekend called Innings Festival, which kind of ties into baseball, and massive record-breaking crowds. So that thirst, that desire to be part of a live entertainment crowd, it's instinctively in us. It's like from the caveman days of, I want to be a part of this big energy and this big thing. That will never go away. How people get to that, how people experience it, how people digest the product in different ways, that's what we need to continue to work on.
So there's a fight when membership started coming about. Why am I doing these extra events? How transitory have been the extra events to actually bleed into, not great they come to one game or they come to a season or whatever, but to make them a lifelong member, to make them something? Is there an event that you did that you're like, wow, okay, this impact? Because it's great to run around and do things, but hey, let's all go to the movies. But but what is that event?
So you're speaking of like a member event. Yeah. So we survey our members until they're blue in the face. We're constantly asking them what's important, what matters, what do you like, what don't you like, and we incentivize them with points that they use through our app to redeem for experiences and items and different things throughout the year. So it really came down to three things that our members constantly said they wanted. It was to feel special. And I see that in you think of every loyalty membership program across any industry. When you feel like you're a little bit more important than the person standing next to you who maybe isn't at that level, that's a good feeling. Priority check-in at the airport, all these different things like that. As human beings, we crave that. They want that. The second thing was flexibility. No one wanted to be pinned down to, a set number of games or a set schedule, so we had to create a lot of flexible things around that. But the third one, and, in terms of feeling special, this plays into that, was just access. They want access to our players, to our front office, to our coaches. They want those Instagrammable moments of, look, I was at this behind the scenes this, I was at behind the scenes that, I met this player, I met that player. So last season, we took all this information and we've had this kind of year-round membership platform now for a number of years. But last season, we really said, let's do as many player interactive, and this required a lot of work with our communications department, our baseball ops department, but we got it down to over 20 events that were player-focused. We have 3 events throughout the year where our members met the entire roster out on the field. The event that, to answer your question, the event that really solidified things for us, most teams every year do a fan fest, if you will, where they bring out, it can be at a convention center or sometimes at their ballpark. Pre-2020, we had a big fan fest here at Chase Field every spring. And sometimes we'd have 20, 30, 40,000 people coming through it. It was great, but there were some issues with just, having that many people in the ballpark and people are missing out on the autographs and the things that matter to them. COVID happened. We had to cancel that, unfortunately. But before we brought it back, we looked at, well, what if we did a variation of that, but just for members? So what if we took that amazing event, which has, again, the whole team is here, player autographs, photos, there's different activities on the field for kids and all these things, and pitched it, or positioned it, I should say, as a member-only event. We did that. 2023 was the first one. We called it the MVP, the most valuable party. And, at its simplest form, it was basically a fan fest just for members, but elevated. So huge success last year. This year we brought it back again. So, you do something once, people can, you don't have to do it again. If you do it twice, now it's a thing. And this event happens. It's a core event now for our members. When you become an Advantage member at the Diamondbacks, which is our season ticket holders, you get access to this exclusive event where you're the entire team, coaches, players. There's stage shows, there's meet and greets, autographs, and it's phenomenal. And when I think about why would I want to be a member, why do our fans want to be a member, beyond the postseason access and all these other things, it's to be able to say, I got to go to the Chase Field, this private event just for me, and experience all this, where the typical fan or ticket buyer isn't doing that. That's cool. That hits on the access, that hits on the special priority, and it makes them feel like they're, the most important fans that we have, which they are.
And FOMO. One question I have, and this came up way back when Bryce Harper was at the Nats. It's right at the end of spring training. He tweets out and he goes, "Hey, sit behind me at left field," right? And I had always wondered what the transitory nature of a social media impact. You have a person that has, at that time, 4 million Twitter followers, whatever. Does that social media actually generate not just interest, but people actually wanting to purchase? Because that's where I don't care how many times I hear a tweet, retweet, whatever, and Facebook, whatever it is. But that to me doesn't matter as much as whether we actually get the sale. Mm-hmm. Do we actually see the transition to sales?
From a social media post like that, there isn't a whole lot of direct evidence that things like that work. Unless it was, hey, come sit behind me, and then I'll take a selfie with you. Right?
Yeah. But that's what I'm kind of getting at. So we've tried different ways with social media. Has social media actually transitioned to actual buyers and conversion? Because to me, that's the biggest thing I have. I realize it sounds like a cranky old man, but does that actually mean, you talked about the text guy. The text guy has to actually show some transition. Does social media actually show enough transition? So,
to answer your question, I would say no. I would say there isn't enough direct evidence that leads to actual sales. But putting my marketing hat on for a second, there's so much noise and so much clutter and so many different things being thrown at us constantly. That slow drip, 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 drip of our brand and our marketing and our messaging, psychologically, I think over time can result in sales. And I'll give you an example of that. To go way back in this interview, answer again your question of what has changed. We, when I first started here, and we had billboards blanketed around the valley, and it would say, buy D-backs tickets, go to this web address or call this phone number to buy, and it was, we'd put all this information out on this billboard, and that was our messaging. If you drive around Phoenix right now, you'll probably see one today. Now our billboards are just a player, and it says tickets on sale now. There's no call to action. There's no web link. There's no phone number. It's just this big, beautiful red and teal image. It says tickets on sale. And so you look at that billboard, the old school method is, well, how do I buy the tickets? People know how to buy the tickets, but just seeing
do QR codes even do anything? You know what I mean? Just because they got a QR code doesn't mean.
I don't think so. And we toyed with that, right? Putting QR codes out there everywhere, and there are some areas where that works, but for us, it's just seeing the branding constantly, seeing the messaging. So to answer your question, seeing the tweet, maybe subconsciously log something in your brain that a week later you're like, oh yeah, that tweet. Oh yeah, I do need to buy my Phillies tickets or whatever it is. But does it directly relate to someone immediately going and buying a ticket package in that moment? I don't think there's enough evidence for that, and quite honestly, I probably doubt that's occurring.
So where do we go from here in terms of, you're training your staff, you're developing, but you're talking new stuff, right? You're talking to new people. Phoenix has always been a place. One time it had 400,000. Now it has like 4 million in the metro.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like it just grows. But how do you make sure that you're hitting on the marks as you're changing these things? Because as everything changes, it's great to say adapt or die, but like everything really goes out the window, right?
Right. How do we even make sure we're adapting in the right way? So the proof is in the pudding. I mean, if we see that steady increase in our FSC base and that steady attendance increase like we've been expecting and seeing, we know we're doing something right. But really, it's just keeping an open mind and open ears to what's happening out there, and not just in sports. Some of our best ideas for sales campaigns, marketing campaigns, what have you, came from industries that couldn't be farther from sports. And we see these things, we track them, we try them. I'll go back to, I think the human element too. I go back to thinking, we mentioned B2B selling and B2C, but in 2021 when we were rebuilding our team, one of our message points was like we're H2H, we're human to human. You're talking to a human being on the other end. When we announced in March of 2020 that the season was postponed, and this is weeks before opening day. The season's postponed. We don't know when we're going to play again. We don't, there's an extreme lack of information. There was this, there's no playbook for this, and all these teams in baseball were left scrambling. What do we do? Do we stay quiet? We don't really have any information to communicate right now. We have thousands of members that are sitting there thinking they're going to be at opening day in 2 weeks. Now that we're saying there's no opening day. So I remember these talks in baseball. Do you reach out? Do you sit back? Do you just, do you say, hey, we don't have any information yet, but we'll let you know when we do? What's the approach? What's going to work? We thought about the H2H thing. And so we immediately went out to every member with, it didn't say, oh, more information to come. Oh, click here to learn about, the COVID-19, whatever. It was a very simple touch point. And basically just said, we're here for you. We hope you're okay. Like, just, please let us know how you're doing. And it had images and it gave the members a chance to kind of write back with their stories of what they were going through right now. A very heartfelt touch point you wouldn't expect from a professional sports team. Had no call to action, no ticket messaging to it really at all. We just want to make sure you're okay. And we got more positive response from that than any other communication we sent that year, because it was just so out of the blue and unexpected, I think.
And it goes back to the authenticity part, which is really, as we, kind of wrap this up, isn't that what we have learned from all this? That if you are not authentic and you just want a transitory sale, it ain't happening anymore. People got enough options, but also they just don't have time for it.
Exactly it. Yeah, we don't have time to sort through, is this BS or not? Is this true or not? Our brains are too overwhelmed. We're just trying to get to the truth. And then when we get to the truth, we decide, is that something that meets my needs? So we're trying to cut out that, like you said, authentic people, authentic sales process. We're not perfect. Long way to go. I'm learning things every day. But are we in a better position today than we were 3, 4, 5, 15, 16 years ago? Absolutely. And I'm bullish on, I think, what's ahead for us.
Well, fantastic, Mike. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast. And, it's always good to meet a fellow ALSD member here on the steering committee right now.
Not right now, but
not
yes.
right now, but whatever. But I mean, the point, we give a shout out to Amanda and all them. But at the same time, nice to, hang with you. And thank you for coming on.
Awesome. It was my pleasure, Troy. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Sports podcast, focusing on the world of sports business. Download our free iPhone, iPad app in the iTunes App Store, an Android app available on Amazon to listen to the entire archive. Or check out sportsdow.com for more podcasts, blog posts, and videos. All episodes of the Tao of Sports podcast are copyrighted and trademarked.